Welcome to Barbara's Bulletin, the podcast where we dive into the most pressing stories from around the world. I'm your host, Barbara, and I'm thrilled to have you joining me today. As we explore the complexities of international relations, we're taking a closer look at the strained relationship between the United States and South Africa. The two nations have a long history of cooperation, but recent events have put their partnership to the test. At the heart of the issue is South Africa's pursuit of a more independent foreign policy, which has led to criticisms of hypocrisy from both sides. On one hand, South African officials have expressed frustration with what they see as the United States' selective application of international law and its tendency to prioritize its own interests over global cooperation. On the other hand, the United States has taken issue with South Africa's cozy relationships with nations like China, Russia, and Iran, which have raised concerns about the country's commitment to democratic values and human rights. The situation is further complicated by the fact that both countries have their own set of inconsistencies and biases in their foreign policy approaches. Despite these challenges, there are still opportunities for cooperation and collaboration between the two nations. In fact, many experts argue that a more nuanced understanding of each other's perspectives could help to build bridges and foster greater dialogue. As we navigate this complex landscape, it's essential to approach the issue with empathy and an open mind. By acknowledging the valid concerns and criticisms on both sides, we can work towards a more informed and balanced discussion. And that's exactly what we'll be doing on today's show. We'll be examining the intricacies of the U.S.-South Africa relationship, exploring the historical context, and discussing potential paths forward for these two important nations. But first, let's take a brief look at some other news from around the world. In Africa, an exhibition in Ivory Coast is using football to retell the country's history, while in other parts of the continent, there are ongoing concerns about conflict, human rights, and economic development. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Barbara's Bulletin. Welcome back to Barbara's Bulletin. We're glad you're still with us as we dive into the latest news from around the world. In this segment, we'll be taking a closer look at some of the top stories making headlines today. First up, let's talk about Nissan's decision to shut down its design studios in the US and Brazil, while downsizing operations in London and Japan. This move is part of the company's Re-Nissan plan, aimed at streamlining its design organization and restoring profitability. The Japanese automaker will be consolidating its design hubs into 5 key locations, including Los Angeles, London, Shanghai, Tokyo, and Atsugi in Kanagawa Prefecture. In other news, Japan has announced that it will not be recognizing Palestine as a state, at least for the time being. This decision comes despite international pressure on Israel over its actions in the territory. Japanese officials have expressed concerns about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, but seem to be taking a more cautious approach to the issue. Meanwhile, in the world of sports, Nissan's not the only one making big changes. The sumo wrestling world is abuzz with news of top wrestlers, Onosho and Takayasu, facing off in an upcoming tournament. And in other entertainment news, wealthy foreigners are snapping up luxury condos in Tokyo, with some calling it the ultimate souvenir. We also have some updates on the ongoing situation in Ukraine, where a former Japanese internee has spoken out about the Russian invasion. The individual expressed a grave sense of crisis over the situation and urged for an end to the violence. Lastly, Japan's government has announced plans to provide disaster relief machinery to Papua New Guinea as part of its efforts to support international cooperation and development. That's all for this segment of Barbara's Bulletin. We'll continue to bring you updates on these stories and more as they develop. Stay tuned for our final story of the day right here on Barbara's Bulletin. Welcome back to Barbara's Bulletin. We're closing out today's show with a look at the latest news from France, where the country's new prime minister is facing a bumpy road ahead. Sébastien Lecornu has taken the reins, vowing to be more creative and serious in his approach to working with opposition parties. But he's got his work cut out for him, with a tough budget debate looming and nationwide strikes already underway. The French government is looking to cut 44 billion euros in public spending to rein in debt, but that's not going down well with many citizens. The socialists are pushing for a tax on the super-rich, while conservative allies are rejecting any general tax rise. Meanwhile, far-right leader Marine Le Pen is predicting Le Cornu's failure and calling for new legislative elections. It's a complex and challenging situation, and opinion polls show that many French voters are pessimistic about the country's economic future. But Le Cornu is known for his methodical approach and ability to find compromises. As one of his longtime friends put it, "There's a Le Cornu method. He has a manner of doing things in the right order, with methodology." As we watch this situation unfold, it's clear that France is at a crossroads. The country needs to find a way to balance its budget and address its debt, while also addressing the concerns of its citizens. It won't be easy, but with careful negotiation and a willingness to listen to all sides, perhaps Le Cornu can find a way forward. That's all for today's Barbara's Bulletin. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, stay engaged.